we're not here just to scare people. We do want to educate about
That's a little bit of the
about what the landscape is looking like. But let's dig a little bit deeper into the three primary attack vectors.
Okay.
So this is how the fraudsters are attacking us.
Yep.
I understand from you that check fraud, ransomware, and business email compromise are the primary three. Dig deeper into check fraud, if you would, and tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we talked about check fraud and kind of how this occurs, where the assaults on postal service workers and the obtaining the arrow keys. What the fraudsters have done is they've literally created a virtual marketplace for fraud. So when they rob the postal service worker or they steal these checks out of the mail, when they rob the postal service worker, they're looking for checks, they're looking for bank statements, credit card mailers, anything that they can monetize, but also anything that they might be able to use to create a synthetic identity. So if they get a bank statement, as an example, then they've got information that they can use to try to convince that victim or potential victim to fall for whatever scam it is that they're trying to perpetrate. So in check fraud, much of this really falls in the first two or three categories that we've got here. What the fraudster will do is they'll take those checks that they're able to steal from the mail, and they'll do what's called washing those checks. You know how that works. They can purchase regularly, easily available chemicals that will enable them to wash the ink off of that check so that they've got basically a blank negotiable document. And they may leave the signature. They may apply a digital signature that they've acquired. They've got the check, so they'll take a picture of the signature and then put that signature back on this document. If they wash the document completely, they'll typically sell those documents on platforms like Telegram or on the dark web. So they're posting this information for sale and creating this virtual marketplace so that the other fraudsters are willing to pay for that information and pay for those documents. So when the other usage will be that they will take that, they'll wash the dollar amount maybe, or they'll alter the dollar amount or alter the payee name in some way. So they might, the check might be written to Jeff Taylor Toyota. Well, they may open an account somewhere in Jeff Taylor Toyota LLC. And so they add the LLC to the end of that. And so they are able to create enough documentation to allow that account to be opened. And then they will add the LLC and they'll deposit that item into that account that they control. So it's not Jeff Taylor Toyota. It's not my company that actually gets the payment. It's going to, that deposit is going to go to that account that's controlled by the fraudster. The second thing is that they will, once they have that stolen check, is that they will, they also have access to the routing and transit and account number that's in the MICR line at the bottom of that check. So they will take that MICR line, they'll go and purchase a blank check stock. With a printer, they'll add that MICR line at the bottom with the routing and transit and account number, and then they'll negotiate counterfeit checks that are going to clear against your account. So we provide a product that for businesses that's called Positive Pay. And when you provide us with that issue file of the items that you have written, the checks that you've written, then we compare that issue file to those checks that are clearing against your account and give you the opportunity to review those as exceptions and tell us when that doesn't match your issue file. And so you can look at those and go, that's not mine. I didn't do that. That check was not one that was a part of my issue file. And so you can let us know that, and we can return that within the appropriate time frame. So they typically will use those once they have washed that item. They'll and have that MICR line information. They will then create those counterfeit checks. It also opens up other opportunities. So the fraudster may conspire with someone who has actually opened an account, a business account, and has the capability to generate an ACH debit. So once they have that routing and transit and account number information key, they're able to then initiate that debit, and they will enter that information maybe into their bill pay software, so that that debit is going to post against the account that it's your account, your authorized account, but they are creating this fraudulent transaction because they've gotten that information.
Jeff, Christian kindly pointed out that he and I have both been at the bank for a little over 20 years, and both of us have been working with clients and commercial clients that entire time. I'd say this is probably a trend that I've noticed over that time. We did a good job in the early 2000s educating clients who wrote a lot of checks out of certain accounts about ensuring they had fraud prevention. I see today, even if you don't write a lot of checks out of an account, if you have others who are sending an ACH credit to that account, if you have others that are depositing into that account, anytime that account number and routing information gets outside of your organization, it's susceptible to fraud.
That's right.
And we have a great client in Mississippi that we were able to work with over the last few months to actually put some fraud prevention on accounts that they didn't write checks out of at all. And I was with them a couple months ago, and they said, we see an attack on these accounts on almost a weekly basis. And it's because they had customers who were paying them by ACH. So while we're all trying to get out of the check writing business, even understanding that sharing that information outside of checks opens you up to fraud too.
That's right. You know, it sounds odd coming from a banker to say, don't write any more checks, do something different. But what we want you to do is to move to a more digital payment channel. A couple of things that people don't normally realize: when you write a check, you're providing information that valuable keys of information or valuable pieces of information on that item. You're providing a check number, so the fraudster knows what your check range is. He knows that your range starts with 1,100 or 400 or whatever it is. You're providing the look of the check, so what the fraudster knows what that check stock looks like, and you're providing the signature and the MICR line, the routing and transit and account number. So one of the things as a consumer, you don't really do this with businesses as much because you're typically in a business, you're not handwriting a check. But as a consumer, if you're going to write checks, number one, I would suggest use your bill pay software as a consumer. Secondly, though, if you can't do that and you've got to write a check, use a gel-based ink. And the reason that you want to use a gel-based ink is that gel ink absorbs into the paper document. It absorbs into that check document. And so it makes it much more difficult for the fraudster to wash that ink off of the check, because there's going to be a remnant of that in there that hopefully somebody would pick up on.
Jeff, I definitely learn something new every time that we talk. Thank you for sharing that.
Sure. I want to make sure to mention, I've talked about converting from paper to electronic, but number one, I want to make sure to mention in the business world and even in consumer, reconcile your account on a regular basis. I mean, I encourage people, recognize daily. If you can reconcile your account on a daily basis, that's the best possible opportunity. If you bank with us, we provide you that previous day and current day activity in our treasury. If you don't bank with us, I'm sure your banking platform probably does the same thing. So you're able to see those items that are posting to your account or that posted last night. Make sure that you are reconciling daily, because there's a time frame within which you have to respond, and that we have to respond to the Bank of First Deposit. So make sure that you do that quickly so that we know that, and we know you're able to notify us as quickly as possible. Make sure that you're placing stop payments on anything that's lost or stolen. Make sure that you're securely storing your check stock. That's so important. You'd be amazed at the number of cases that I investigate where I find out it's a small business. The owner is the only one who signs a check, and he's going on vacation in Europe for 2 weeks. So he signs 15 blank checks and leaves them in a desk drawer for someone to use if they need to. And next thing you know, some of those are gone. And not to indict anyone in particular, but it might be the cleaning crew. It could be anybody who knows where those checks are. takes them from the desk drawer. And the other thing, of course, is using positive pay. A couple of things that I would suggest too, if you can avoid the use of a window envelope, then make sure that you're doing that. There have been cases where the fraudster actually is taking that window envelope and they squeeze it down and they're able to see through the window and determine that, yes, it's a check and yes, it's a dollar amount that I'm interested in. And so depending on their threshold, or they may not pick one that's small, but they would decide that, yes, I'm going to take this check because I know what the dollar amount is. So that window envelope's an indicator. The second thing is to, as opposed to putting the check, if you're going to mail a check, rather than put it in your mailbox and raise the red flag, literally, you're raising the red flag and alerting a fraudster that there's mail in that mailbox, take it directly to the postal service. Go to the post office, hand it to that postal worker across the counter. You're not going to remediate it completely, but what you do is take the opportunity of the blue box or the mailbox, you kind of take that out of the mix. So just a couple of things from an industry suggested practice idea.